Hello, my name is Marina Campos. Welcome to the Teleperformance Building in the Metaverse. I am so excited to, first of all, participate in this launch, and second, to be here with Tommaso. So, ever since I read this book, I've been really looking forward to meeting Tommaso and asking him a couple of questions. So, first of all, let me quickly introduce myself, Marina Campos, based out of Miami and now in the Metaverse. I work at Teleperformance for the last 12 years. Who's Teleperformance? Well, our friends call us TP. But over the last 40 years, we've been connecting the best brands in the world with consumers, right? And having great interactions. That's a little bit about us. We're present in over 80 countries and now in the Metaverse as well. So having said that, I'm really excited to be here with Tommaso. If you could quickly introduce yourself, please.
Marina, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And wow, what an amazing, immersive metaverse. So, congratulations, dear Teleperformance team, and hope the audience here is enjoying this immersiveness. When I'm not in the metaverse, I'm based out of Silicon Valley, and I'm originally from Italy. I lived in Germany for almost 2 decades, went through London, ended up in the Bay Area. And the reason for that is because I've been in tech since '98. Started my first startups in 2001. Fast forwarded up until 6 years ago, 4 startups, 2 exits. And now this year, I launched my most recent startup. I am obviously, and I'm more than happy to share with you in the metaverse. I'm a faculty at UC Berkeley, where I teach metaverse and Web3. Marina, thank you for showing the book. I'm a 2 times author. Most recent book is what Marina showed, called Navigating the Metaverse, which the forward is done by Yatsu, the chair of Animoca Brands, who with 380 investments leads the investment realm of the metaverses. And I'm also myself an angel investor in a series of metaverse. All this to say, humbly learning one chat at a time about the metaverse, Marina. Great for having me.
Thank you. Having you with us is definitely a great honor. First of all, I wanted to congratulate everybody that was involved in getting this building ready. Right, it really takes a village to create such an endeavor. If you haven't explored, to our viewers, please do. There's so much that you can. There's games, there's arcade, there's you can climb the wall. So if you look around, right, you will find many fun things to do. So why are we in the metaverse, Tommaso? I think it's first of all, what is the metaverse, right? And why now? So we're in this building that we're launching right now, but why now do you think that there's so much interest in the metaverse? Why is it such an important topic?
Yeah, so I believe that this is a fundamental questions in order for us to understand the momentum in which we live, right? Before we dig into more of the topic, what is that the metaverse actually does, right? Metaverse is another innovation cycle. And what all innovation cycles, Marina, have in common is usually, let's call it 3 ingredients. Ingredient number one is that the previous innovation cycle has reached its limits, let's call it, right? And at the same time, while the innovation cycle that was previously followed, and in terms of metaverse, it was more of, let's call it, Web 2, right? The technology has made some advancements. So that's the ingredient number two. And number three is then that the consumer are evolving in its needs, right? And that's the reason why we are right now at this closing of an innovation cycle called Web 2 and the beginning of this new innovation cycle called Web 3. And this Web 3 innovation cycle is actually responding to the limits of Web 2. What are the limits of Web 2 that has reached a bottleneck and a limit in its own, right? It's we are on autopilot in terms of us going through content and in terms of ownership. So Web3 at the center of all this, what we have is immersiveness and ownership. These are the two main fundamental pillars that the new cycle Web3 is bringing.
Immersiveness, that's an important word, right? Yeah, we're here in the building, right? So everybody that's seeing us right now, but how is that different, right? And why is that important?
Immersiveness is really changing the way that we perceive things. Immersiveness, to give you a concrete example, is the moment that you are within something. In Web 2, we could not be within something. In Web 2, the way that we engaged as a user was by browsing or scrolling through the famous feeds, right? So you're not within one thing, but you swipe away something, right? Which is usually content, right? In Web3, we are going to be part of something, right? Like similar to this building here, right, Maria? It means that by being within all our senses, right? The way that we look at things in the future with connections, gloves, right? Connecting gloves, you will be also touching differently, maybe smell, right? All our senses are more active. And because our senses are more active, we will perceive and absorb content in a new way. And simple words, experiences is a new way of feeling, a new way of discovering whatever we are going to be presented, which usually will be products, which usually will be services, and which usually are, let's call it, purposes and solutions, right?
Yeah, thank you. I did a lot of reading to prepare for today's talk. One of the things I read was a recent report that Teleperformance created together with MIT. Right, that was fascinating. And also, I read a recent article that talk about the three phases of the metaverse. Also, based on all this reading, another question. Often I see people saying metaverse is VR, right, and immersiveness. So, can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, let me maybe pick here the most frequent asked question, Marina. What is the metaverse? But
What
I
is the
always like to
metaverse?
start right. What isn't the metaverse? Let's frame it on what it's not, so that we can get closer to what it is. So first of all, you said, Tommaso, is it VR? Well, the metaverse, unfortunately, is not VR, but it's actually platform agnostic. Obviously, you can experience metaverses and virtual reality with a headset, but it's also, web-based, similar way that most of us are consuming it right now, experiencing it right now. It is mobile, right? But what I strongly believe is that the metaverse is going to achieve mass adoption as soon as we are going to have a very mature augmented reality, which means you really be immersive in your real life. So that's one thing of what the metaverse is not. It's not the VR, right? The metaverse is not a game, but actually gamers and crypto aficionados were early adopters of those immersive and gamified environments. Number three, the metaverse is not those NFTs. Non-fungible tokens, or unique digital assets, are a part of the economy of this digital environment, and you want to create a supply and demand of and around those digital assets. So NFTs, a digital asset that live within a metaverse. Right, on position number four, the metaverse is not represented by one specific brand, such as Meta. Simply, Tesla is not the car, right, and Google is not the internet, right? So people ask me, well, are you competing? Are you being, and with Meta? No, Meta is a great player in this space, right? And last but not least, the metaverse, Marina, is not a place, but the metaverse is an experience as an extension to our real life, meaning it connects your physical with the digital in order for us to have an immersive way to experience products, to experience places, to experience stories, which are called then purposes, right? And at the center of all this, you have a supply and demand of a unique digital asset, which creates an economy. And this is something that we then own. So you have summarized an experience that is immersive and has ownership at the center of all this.
Thank you. Thank you for that description. So, how does the economy look? You're talking about creating assets. Is this the creator economy that's often mentioned?
Absolutely, yes. It is a creator economy. In Web 2, the end user, whatever we shared within the internet, comments, likes, subscription, right? We basically were giving up information to third parties for them to collect. So they became the owner of this information. In Web 3, whatever we do, the preferences we have, the friends we have, the likes, the comments, we carry that as owner. We carry the tokens, we carry the assets. Is similar like, in a backpack. Imagine you are in a world, and we call it a digital world, right? And you go around with your backpack. It's something that belongs to you. And within this backpack, you decide what you put in there, right? And it's very different from the Web 2 in terms of the benefit, because we are now creating the benefits.
For me, the digital backpack is a very good way to visualize, right? What we're talking about. So, if you could indulge me, I'll ask a couple of questions regarding that, right? As a mom, right, I'm always worried about backpacks, right? My kids lose it, what's in it? So let's talk about this backpack example. How do you put things in the backpack, right? How do I guarantee that whatever's going in the backpack is safe, right? That we're guaranteeing like safety, security, let's say for kids, right? Um, uh, Guaranteeing like the brand identity, for instance. And then later on, we can talk about typical. If you lose your backpack, how do you get customer service? So maybe we can
Yeah.
talk about keeping it safe, and not losing that backpack.
So that is an excellent reflection, and I would like to bring here to all our, let's call it, attention, is that the metaverse is still in a nascent phase. It's really a baby, if you so want, right? But because it's a baby, it doesn't mean that we need to distance ourselves because it cannot walk or it cannot talk, right? So the baby has the DNA of a human being that eventually in the near future will contribute and impact the world and a society and have a legacy. So let's reflect a second and say, okay, where do we stand? Metaverse is nascent. What are the nascent features, right? And when you are nascent, you have pros and cons, right? The baby cannot walk, but you need to carry, right? If you want to see it as a con. And similar to that analogy, right? The metaverse right now has the con of us figuring out, right, regulations, right? In Web 2, we had no backpack. In Web 2, I brought something and I give it to somebody else. Now I have it in my backpack. And obviously, now you have the pitfall of what is it that you put in there, right? Similar than in Web 2, also in Web 3, the regulation of content, right? It will always be an issue, right? So we will be having a strong community-led regulation, right? When you say community in Web 2, you had the followers that were saying, hey, this content might be not appropriate. And in Web 3, I foresee that the community will even have a stronger voice to what is correct and what is not correct. Why? Because in Web 2, we were followers. In Web 3, we are part of something because our voice not all of a sudden has a weight. It counts. What I mean with has a weight, giving the fact that we own something, it has a more standing and the people listen more, right? So people regulated, community regulated content. The second part will be we'll be having a series of technologies similar to what you that will be filtering also what comes and what is allowed within the digital realm that will be distributed by it.
That's fascinating. So thinking about this baby, it will be very interesting to see as it grows up, right? I think
Yeah,
that's a very important point. Timing, right? It really does matter. So we're at the beginning of something very different, right? A lot of disruption. One of the things that I wanted to let everybody know is in the last 10 years, I've actually led within global marketing an area called the Customer Experience Lab. So here we're celebrating 10 years. So congrats to everybody that's been part of this huge project. Actually, last year we did a proprietary study regarding the metaverse, consumer sentiment, customer experience. What do consumers want? What do they prefer? If they want to talk about their backpack, right? How are they going to engage in the metaverse? So, having said that, and also for everybody that's attending, if you go on our website, you can download many things, right? The M&T paper that I mentioned, the Customer Experience Lab, and you can get more details. But in your words, what do you think the customer service in the metaverse will look like, right? Now, what does it look like, and how will it evolve over time as this baby grows up?
what I really like at this question is that it's making us reflect about applications that go beyond already version 01 of what we understand as the metaverse, because the categorization nowadays, or the nascent categorization and understanding of what the metaverse was born out, was the gaming industry, right? So gamers, as I mentioned before. Now, this question leads already into, well, what other use cases are we going to see, such as customer service? So what is the customer service as we know it in Web2, and Teleperformance is leading in that, right? But it's a really, on, internet-based, telephone-based approaches, right? I envision a world, and I can foresee a world that if I take the two pillars of the metaverse, of immersiveness and ownership. Allow me, Marina, here to brainstorm with you on
Mhm.
what a potential use case would be, right? If you have a challenge with, let's call it a hotline that you want to call, regardless of what industry, right? You would now all of a sudden, for instance, take your phone and point at the QR code, or point at the device that is representing the challenge, right? And on this device, you have now an augmented reality avatar that appears, and it greets you. Hello, Marina. How are you today, right? And great to see you again. By the way, last time you checked in with us, you had this issue. And based on my dashboard, I see that it was resolved. How can I help you today, right? And now you start basically interacting with an avatar that could be either connected with artificial intelligence, right? Or it could even be a human-to-human interaction that is now on the front end visualized as an augmented reality. Now, the underlying layer that I envision here is that you are no longer just under serviced with the goal of solving the problem, but the time that you spend in there, you're going to be also rewarded, because ownership can reward. So I believe really strongly that there will be new use cases where you say, hey, Marina, you were with us on the phone or on this augmented reality for 20 minutes, right? And for that, you get X amount of coins as a thank you, right? And those coins, remember, Marina, you have them in your backpack, right? So you can take now those coins. So thank you, Teleperformance, for the coins. I can go now in another digital environment seamlessly, because you own the backpack, right? And you can do then with those coins whatever you think it's right. Donate them, swap them, buy other things, right? That's kind of a, by the way, if Teleperformance does the product, I hope we do it together, right,
For sure. Actually, you're talking about rewards. So, let's explore the building, because there's so many wearables that you can collect, right? Talking about the rewards, like you do something, you get something, right? If you go in the climbing game, you get a rope. Yeah, if you go to arcade, you get something. So to everybody that's participating in the building, we've got some great games, wearables. Yeah, my kids, like, they love playing the games and collecting the things, the coins. So that's part of the experience for sure, right? And putting that in that backpack again. And over time, right, you have to keep it interesting. So every month there's going to be something in the building, and we're going to explore that. So it's funny that you mentioned the wearables. And the other thing too, avatars, right? So let's explore that a little bit more. And why am I asking that? Because if you go out to the front of the building, you can check out Isabella, which is our TP's new digital interaction expert. So please do, and you'll have a great surprise. If you could talk a little bit more about what you see with the avatars, possible examples, and how does that move going forward?
I believe that avatars are going, considering the two pillars again, to keep it very simple: immersiveness and ownership. Immersiveness, you are in digital to physical environment, right? Which will allows us to be in this digital environment, or us to live and explore a digital environment by incorporating an avatar. And it's either us, it's Tommaso or Marina, right, of being the avatar, right? And we can self-express ourselves, right, in this digital environment in a way that is way different than what we are in real life, right? Maybe in the digital environment, I feel like being a rock star, and I dress like that, right? So and I can express me totally differently, right? Or the avatar, based on the maturity of artificial intelligence, can be then incorporated through artificial intelligence, right? That through the neural networks will be learning certain behaviors, right? Imagine that there will be an avatar that is capable, based on the learnings on serving us, the consumer, right? In a very natural way, right? About specific topics. So I think that avatar will be fundamental key ingredients, right, or actors for this new environment, right?
Great. Another question of interest, I think, to everybody, right? You're a company. Where do you start exploring the metaverse, right? I mean, we've been working with metaverse for a while at TP, right? We actually had an event in Decentraland launching at the For Fun Festival last year. We worked in the Pride Parade. But if you're a company that's not in the metaverse, what are practical applications? Where do you start? And what are the benefits?
Great questions. I get it asked a lot, and I like to have two concepts that are tangible here and applicable. So the first one is given the fact that we are in a very nascent phase of the metaverse, right? You as a company do not need to double down on joining today, but what you need to do is you need to start experimenting today. So the advantage, you don't understand innovation on paper, right? So everybody says, "Oh, I think I understood." Man. So you really need to experience, you really need to feel the benefits, right? What does it mean being part of a community? How does a community behave differently than a follower? What does it mean having those supply and demands of digital assets? What does it mean having an experience that is gamified? Like, you theoretically can understand and follow the right reasoning, but when you are within there, you have those nuances that only the ones who really are immersed in that or execute towards it will understand. So step number one is start executing through POCs, through mitigated risks, right? It has a beginning, it has an end, right? And start exploring different environments, digital environments. Now, what I also would like to add is to start having the big picture in mind. So you start small, but the question is, where do you want to go? You start with a POC, but what is it about, right? Ultimately, the metaverse is going to create a new consumer engagement. And the new consumer engagement is really connecting the physical business of yours with the digital world in a new way. And new was defined as immersive and ownership. So the question is, okay, I start small, but how can I ultimately also make my current business part of the future direction that this metaverse is taking me, right? And so you can reverse engineer in slices, right? And I talk a lot about that in the book, also in my courses. You can reverse engineer in 4 steps where to go while starting very small, right? So start, mitigate risks, start learning, but have the big picture in mind of connecting your current physical, your current business with the digital world, right? Which I call the digital market, by the way.
I like that word, the phygital. And thank you. I learned so much from your course, Alma Meta. So I definitely want to recommend if you want to take a look at that. I think that's a great way to get more information as well regarding what's coming. Um, while I was taking Alma Meta and doing a little bit more research about you, I also saw that you're involved in education, right? Education training, language training also. Is that a practical application that you see of the metaverse? If you could talk a little bit about that. I'm asking too because that's one of the things that have been engaged, and I thought that was very interesting in the metaverse.
I do believe that, similar to what you previously asked about, use case of customer service, right? There are other aspects or other segments or business units and industries, right, that will benefit from this immersiveness and ownership. You see, I keep it repeating because at the end of the day, I think it's great if we tangibilize what the benefits are. Immersiveness, right? So, what's the benefit in education of immersiveness and ownership? Well, the educational system is to be politically correct, has a lot of opportunity to be optimized, right? I didn't say it's broken, right? And I have the pleasure to speak a couple of languages, and I've lived in 3 countries, so I had the pleasure to compare it, right? So and so the immersiveness will allow us, the human being, the next generation, to be more immersed in what we learn. When you are more immersed, you cannot swipe through things. So I repeat, because I think that's very strong,
Mhm.
right? So when you are immersed, you cannot swipe through things. So because you cannot swipe through the content, right, you pay more attention. And what we are all fighting for is attention span, right? So we are more dedicated in absorbing. And because we are, again, immersed, we learn with all senses, right? We learn with our visual, we learn with our hands, potentially with our smell, right, in the future, right? And so this will impact more our senses, and because of that, more the way that we learn. And the second instance is, again, I spend the time in this environment learning, and I get rewarded. So the entire reason why you learn is not only because of the ultimate result of you having more knowledge or is getting a certificate, but because you get rewarded. So you spend time there, and again, your backpack, boom, you have something more in your backpack to then go seamlessly into other worlds, digital worlds, right? That you can then allocate whatever you have in your backpack.
Well, that's fantastic. Tommaso, I think we could speak for hours, right? But maybe we should kind of start wrapping this up. What haven't I asked? Like, thinking about the future, get your crystal ball out. What do you think is important for viewers to think about the future before they go and collect more rewards in our building, right? And with that parting thought.
Well, first of all, unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, right? But
Neither do
I
I.
like, but I can see myself drinking a caipirinha on the beach of Ipanema. Kidding, no. I When it comes to the metaverse, I like to wrap up, and these are just my 2 cents. Obviously, it's a subjective opinion based on the science that I read, that I see, that I follow, right? I break it down into 3 things over the next 10 years that I see. Number one, I do believe that we really start at the beginning, at the core of what makes the humankind, which is knowledge. I do believe that the metaverse will be disrupting, or will be reinventing the way that we accumulate knowledge. In other words, the way that we learn. I do believe that the metaverse is the ideal, immersive, and rewarding way of us being educated. So I believe that our, not just our kids, but also us as adults, will be learning in a way more pleasant, in a way more rewarding, in a way more impacting in the metaverse. And because then we are learning in the metaverse, we are going to be living in this digital environment, and we'll be learn how to do business in the metaverse. So the consequence of that is that we will be having a bigger workforce over the next 10 years within those digital environments that will benefit from, and this is number three, the supply and demand of unique digital assets. And I foresee that because of this new economy, because of this new workforce, because of this new education, that the supply of demand of the digital asset will be bigger than the supply of demand of the physical assets. In other words, I believe that the GDP, which is gross domestic products, will be surpassed by the GMP, the gross metaverse product, which will be the supply and demand of unique digital assets in those digital worlds. That's how I envision the next 10 years.
Yeah, fascinating. Can't wait to see this baby grow up, right? And hopefully we'll meet in the metaverse. Continue
For
the
sure.
discussion at another time. In this visual world. Thank you so much.
Thank
Looking
you, Marina.
forward to continuing discussion some other day. And thanks again to all the viewers. Now I think it's time for them to go and collect more things for their digital backpacks, right? Hopefully they can explore, collect all the wearables, and really enjoy this very unique experience. Tommaso, can't thank you enough. And until we meet again, thank you.
Out-
And everybody else,
Outstanding.
enjoy, explore.
Outstanding. Thank you, Marina. I'll see you in the metaverse.
Thank
Bye.
you. See you in the metaverse.